Hi there, I'd like to give you a bit of a look at the game of Antietam in their quiet fields. It's the second edition. And before we go any further, I'd like to say that being English, I would have read this as Antietam. I hope I don't pronounce it that way during this game. I've learnt that it's Antietam, and if I do mispronounce it, please forgive me. So this is part of the Gamers Civil War Brigade series. Now, I'm really excited about this game. It's the first time I played it, and it's the first CWB Civil War Brigade series game I have played. I have played the Napoleonic Battle Brigade series, which is a cousin or sister game series to this, and I love them. There are some differences in the systems because we have it's a slightly different age and different styles of warfare, but a lot of similarities. And in fact, one of my first ever videos was of the Austerlitz battle in that series, and I also have covered Leros, which is the equivalent in the Second World War. But anyway, so this series, just what I'd like to do in this video is to give you just a quick outline of the series, a little bit of a battlefield walk around of this battle. I'll speak about some of the special situation rules for this battle. Then I'll tell you the starting commands, what happened at the start, and the situation so far. So in this game, the standard unit is a brigade. So each infantry counter is a brigade, and then you get artillery counters are batteries, and artillery generally comes in 5 strength points, can be broken down into up to 5 1 strength points. So a 1 strength point I think would be a gun section. Then you have leader counters, so leaders are named leaders such as Robert E. Lee, McClellan, and then we have in this battle we have Jackson and Longstreet, we've got Hooker and Mansfield, Burnside over here, and so forth. So generally what happens is you have the army commanders have a counter, and there's also a counter for the army headquarters. You have a supply counter, so the army has supply, and then you have corps headquarters, corps leaders, and corps supply. And then the brigades, then you have division leaders, and each division has a number of brigades in the divisions, depending on the organisation of the actual army. Each brigade has a line on here. This is the loss chart. So you have a number of boxes, and each time you get a kill or a straggler loss, you'll mark it off here. So you can see some, these are Union brigades. The Gourmands Brigade, which is the 1st Brigade of the 2nd Division in the 2nd Corps, is an AA unit. So that units range from C size to B size is twice C, A is twice B, AA is twice A, and AAB would be twice A and another B. I think AAB is the biggest. No, you actually get AAAs here. So you can see that's huge sized brigade. Compare that to some of the Confederates, like the Stonewall Iron Brigade is just 2 lost boxes worth. So each of those boxes is worth about 100 fellows, so that's only 200 fellows or so in this battle, whereas Crawford here had 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, about 2,600 in his brigade alone. Now, so that's the general sort of units. You can also, each brigade can also throw out on either side of it a, let's zoom in so you can see. So we've got here, these are artillery. Here's a detached artillery, so that's just 3 strength points detached from one of these 5 ones. And then here you can just about see we've got, so here's a brigade. In fact, I've got 2 brigades stacked on top of each other, and then one of those brigades has thrown out this marker which illustrates he's extended his line. So one of those brigades is extended into this hex. So if that brigade was, say, A strength, it would have divided into two, so there'd be two B strengths in that hex. So a C strength brigade, with sort of 300 men can't extend out. That's because each hex is 200 yards across, so it represents a sizable amount of distance. What that breaks down to is that 9 hexes is a mile, 5.5 hexes is a kilometre. So if we zoom back out just for scale, what we then have is, say for example, we've got the Sunken Road here and we've got Burnside Bridge here. So this distance is about 1.5 miles. I'll get to the battlefield walk round in a bit. So the time scale is half an hour per turn, and within a turn units can move. So an infantry unit could basically move 6 hexes in the clear, and it could move 5 hexes and close combat. The turn sequence is issuing of orders and various things that go along with that. Then just as basic outline, then you have movement. Close combat occurs within movement, and then you have fire. And the fire section is very interesting because the defender, so the non-phasing player, will fire before the phasing player. So if the Confederates can move up, then the Union will get to fire at them, and then the Confederates can fire back. Now, obviously, if a Confederate moves and enters the Union hex, that close combat will happen immediately. You go to a little sub-segment within the movement segment to perform that. Now, what this means, because in effect the non-phasing side gets defensive fire, is that it's very powerful on defence, as you don't get to move up to attack without getting shot at before you get to reply. So it makes for an interesting system. I'm not sure I don't think it's that way around. It's actually that in the MBS. I can't remember, it's been a while, but that has made a big impression on me in this game. So that's sort of so the main sort of the system itself is pretty sound and not too complicated. There's not too many modifiers and so forth. You have a few charts and things to check. It's the details that sort of it's quite a time-consuming system. So it takes me about an hour to play to do a side. So each turn, one go for each side, will take me about 2 hours. That's maybe I move quite slow, but also there's because you have these loss charts, there's a lot of checking and ticking off things on this. When you're having battles, if there's no fighting, obviously turns go a lot quicker. In a battle, you're generally causing between 1 and 2 losses. In extreme ranges, you could go up to at the extreme you could cause 4 losses. Then you also might cause straggler losses. And then you have to check for a morale check. You can roll all these dice in one go, but you still have to check on the tables. And so you can cause losses, stragglers, and morales. That has any effect of combat. And morale can be shaken, disorganized, or routed, or you can go from normal to bloodlusted, which is kind of like a extra benefit. It gives you extra gumption. And you also get retreat, so you might retreat 1 or 2 hexes as a result of combat, and if you get a rout result, then you'll rout back as many hexes as possible. Now, stragglers is something that, normal losses are permanent. Stragglers are marked off with just a tick like that. They can be recovered if you're out of the battle and depending on your morale at a certain segment in the sequence of play. So there's quite a bit of back and forth. So that's the basic nuts and bolts. Then the main character of this system is the orders system. Essentially what you're doing is your army commander is going to issue orders to corps commanders. Once those corps commanders have accepted, not distorted or delayed those orders, then they immediately, any division commander within 8 movement points can then put those orders into effect, and that division commander can order any of his brigades that are within 4 movement points of him. So you have the corps commander can send out his order to any units within 12 hexes, provided you've got those mediators in between. What this then means is that the corps commander can only attack out to that range, or else he has to move with the brigade with the attack. And so in a situation like this, where you have McClellan here, his orders will take a long time to reach around to here, unless the corps commanders themselves can take the initiative. And the better commanders have a better chance of that. It's still like the best commanders still only a 9 or above on 2d6, so it's not going to happen as often as they would want. And each time you do it, if you roll a 2, you become what's called a loose cannon, and your opponent will make a move for you that turn. So there is a bit of a risk in trying to take the initiative. And orders are basically of 2 types, simple or complex. Simple orders will just be like move from Sharpsburg to Nicodemus Hill. As long as there's no likelihood of combat within that, it's a simple order. Probably Nicodemus Hill is a bit risky because you might come under artillery fire. So say move from Sharpsburg to Hauser Ridge here for a simple order. That's going to sort of go into effect quite quickly and easily. A complex order is basically an attack order or an order within the vicinity of firing and shooting where you might get engaged. And so, like reinforce Langton in the west was, although that's not a direct attack order, it's in the vicinity of the fighting, so that would be a complex order, and that can take longer depending on a role or the general level of proficiency of the army leader issuing the order and the corps leaders receiving them. And you have to follow the spirit of the orders, so there's a bit of give and take in this, and it's the beauty of the system, but it's also something that could raise most questions, and it's difficult as a solo player because I don't have another fellow for us to sort of reason an argument. Because, for example, in this game, Hooker starts here and he has orders to proceed up the Hagerstown Pike and to take various areas around here. Now, the Confederates started with some artillery up on the heights here, and so as soon as he was moving out, he would come under artillery fire. So to me it seemed natural that he would have ordered a brigade or two to remove the artillery while his whole corps is moving up, so they didn't all take fire without doing anything about it. However, that would have taken them a significant distance away, about 1 kilometre away from the Hagerstown Pike. So my question is, do his initial orders, and those are the orders that come with the scenario, they're sort of initial orders given out at the game beginning. So I didn't change them. There is an option you can start the game with your own orders, but if you do that, play balance might be affected, because this battle started a certain way. If you completely rewrite it from the beginning, it could draw into... essentially, you would give the Union a much better chance than they had due to their limited knowledge and general reluctance to engage where they didn't know what was going on. So taking that starting order, my question was, I wanted to, and I did start to move a couple of brigades over to charge those guns, either to get them away or to get them to decamp or to take them. And then I thought, but we've strayed quite far from the Hagerstown Pike. So in the end, I decided that was not part of their remit, and so I just moved a corps sort of to slightly close to them, and in the end the guns moved away. I decided the Confederates would not risk that Hook had maybe got an initiative and sent a division out over there to take all their guns, which had no infantry defending them. So that's a brief overview of the systems. Now the battlefield walk around. So the Battle of Antietam. So essentially this is the battle that occurred after the famous event where McClellan was given information of Lee's precise orders, which had been found wrapping a couple of 3 cigars lying on the ground. so what's happened is this is the Harper's Ferry Road. So Harper's Ferry is this way. Hagerstown Pike is going this way, and we've got the town of Sharpsburg here. Over here is the Potomac River, and you've got some hexes down here which aren't probably going to come into play. So the river carries on around here. And the only way over the Potomac is there's a ford here, and then there's a bridge over here. So the Confederates are based in this area. Those are their escape routes. And they have been caught napping. So Lee, for the first time in his life, was surprised by McClellan, who moved quite promptly upon him. So Lee quickly recalled Jackson from Harper's Ferry. Longstreet was here with him, so he's got the 1st and 2nd Corps and some cavalry division. McClellan then played true to character and kind of sat down on the banks of the Antietam Creek, or on the bluffs, I should say, overlooking it. Now, a lot of people, I understand, don't like this garish map. I actually love it because for me it's very clear. It shows quite distinctly you've got the highest heights here, and then gradations leading down to the coolest, lowest, sort of wettest areas down there by the rivers and creeks. So I find it does the job exceedingly well, and I like the colour scheme. Let me put a bit more light on it, because we're in September, so it's late summer, Northern Virginia. Lee has taken the battle to the Union land, so they can bring their harvest in, and also to try and raise some support and offer a threat to Washington, which is why McClellan was given Pope's command and sent back out onto the attack. So I think this colour scheme speaks well to me of a hot summer. You can imagine the hay and so forth, the dried out grasses, and then the cooler valleys and creeks down there. So here's Antietam Creek. You've got thick forests around here, Sharpsburg itself here, and then here we have the cornfield, Dunker Church. You've got the westward and eastwards here, and northwards here. So this is where most of the battle took place, as I understand it, historically. I'll just give you a look over here briefly at some of the terrain. You can just see here you've got these extra markings around the hex sides here, and you have some up over here as well. These denote steep hex sides. Now, no one can actually climb those. You also have less steep ones as well, which are similar kind of markings, slightly lighter. So they can be climbed, but they're sort of steeper slopes than just a normal elevation change. And you have Burnside's Bridge here. It wasn't called Burnside's Bridge at that time. It was named because Burnside with his 9th Corps was here, and he had had orders to attack across this bridge. He dallied and hummed and hawed for a while because apparently he'd been more or less demoted, had been given command of a corps, whereas he had, I don't know what, before, a wing, that's right. So he was in command of a whole wing before. So there's special rules relating to that. But anyway, this bridge was given his name subsequently, so it has failed attack. Lots of men lost their lives down there. In fact, the subtitle of this game, In Their Quiet Fields, is a reference to all the fellows left laying their bodies behind in these quiet fields at the end of the battle. So McClellan's up here with the 9th Corps, the 5th Corps, the 2nd Corps, and a cavalry division there with Pleasanton. Then the 12th Corps with Mansfield and Hooker's 1st Corps were here. Then you have Longstreet here with Hill's division lining what is the famous Sunken Road. Now on Board Game Geek, some people have been speaking about their visits to the battlefield, and the Sunken Road is in here, and apparently over here there's like dips and bumps and rises such that when the Union were coming this way, they would disappear behind a dip, and suddenly they appeared sections very close to the Sunken Road. So close range, some fierce shooting going on there, and then they were upon the Sunken Road. You can't quite emulate that with the way the terrain is here, modelling 200 yards at a stretch. So that's just an effect of the scale of this game. So we have the Sunken Road here, Dunker Church is here, and the famous cornfield is here. Now you can see these yellow triangles represent victory points. So these are prizes for the Union only. So the cornfield will give them 3 if they take control of that, 4 for the church, 3 for the westwards. How many is it? It's another 7 for the Sunken Road, and then they get 13 for Sharpsburg, and 5 for each of the exits over here. Now each losses are they also get 5 for taking Burnside Bridge over there. Now that's in so the Union can gain victory points for these places, but it's not for sort of a 1-for-1 basis. So for example, the 3 victory points there is the equivalent of is the equivalent of 10 losses for the Confederate or 21 for the Union. So what that tells us is that if the Confederate lose 10 strength points, that's losses not just stragglers, or more, that's not worth the defence of that area. And the Union can afford to take 20 losses to take that area and still be slightly up or par in points. So if Sharpsburg worth 13 is worth 50, so they could lose 5,000 men taking Sharpsburg, and apparently that would be worth it. I don't know if people would actually agree to that on the field at the day, but it gives you some idea of how to sort of cost up the objectives. So for example, there's 7, 4 and 3 here. That would be the so the Confederates could handily lose 46 strength points, and that would equal that loss there. So they would probably, rather than lose those men and that, they would rather retreat and save the men. Whereas the Union could take that and 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So they could spend 100 strength points taking that. But you can see that would be essentially a corps or 2 just to take that, and then they would only reach parity. So essentially they're going to want to spend at most, say, 50 strength points taking all of these to make it that worth their while. So that's enough, I think, of a quick battlefield walk around. Now the special situation here is there's 2 of them. One is McClellan dragging his feet, how that's handled, and then there is the other is the sort of unrigid command arrangement of the Confederate side. So I'll deal with that first. As I said earlier, you have an army leader delivering orders to corps leaders, who then pass those on to division leaders, who pass them on to their brigade units. And each brigade has a leader listed on it, the commander of that brigade, but he's not a separate counter. Where did I take that from? Okay, he's integral to that counter. So that's the structure with the Unions. With the Confederates, it's a bit different. So although the 1st and 2nd Corps are on the map, they don't actually have a headquarters, which means that Lee is going to issue orders to divisions immediately. It makes sense in a way because they haven't got so many divisions as the they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 17. Oh, so 17 to the Union. But essentially, what we have there is that you couldn't move a whole bunch of the Confederate army in one go, but you will be able to. Each division will be a bit more mobile. Each division can have separate orders, so one around here, instead of sending a whole corps around there, or something like that. So Lee's issuing orders straight to divisions. Now, Longstreet and Jackson, normally corps leaders do not get orders. They can take initiative and order their whole corps themselves. In this game, they can take initiative and issue orders to divisions the same as in the same manner as Lee. So and they are not restricted in who. So it doesn't matter whose corps they are issuing orders to. So Longstreet can issue it to any division he happens to be next to. It doesn't matter if it's nominally in Jackson's second corps or not. So they have a degree of flexibility in that. And then another thing is that the cavalry, which at the moment is here, they don't need any orders at all to operate. So I've sent them round here. They were threatening Hooker's supply, first corps supply and headquarters. So he's had to withdraw it here and hold a couple of brigades back to defend it. So that's very handy having the Confederate cavalry able to operate as lone guns like that. Although obviously they're not very strong and could easily be decimated if they're not careful or significantly damaged. So they don't want to get caught, but they're able to offer a decent threat. So the other part of this special situation is to do with McClellan. Now, the Union player is penalised in a couple of ways in this. One is that McClellan himself has a rating of 0, which means, and his leaders have not so high ratings, which means when he issues an order to one of his corps leaders, it's going to have a sort of a lower total, and so it's less likely to be immediately accepted, and it's more likely to take longer to be received, understood, and put into operation. And it's the opposite for the Confederates. So the higher rated leaders, Lee's a 4, Jackson's a 4, Longstreet's a 4. So their orders are going to generally happen more promptly. There's a chance though they could have equal delays, but it's that's the general situation. Then in another way, McClellan offers a lot of problems for the Union in that every time he issues an order, you score a McClellan point. Every time he has more than one corps in committed to action, he loses a McClellan point for each corps above 1 that he's committed. And every time each corps is committed, it takes a number of points. The first time it's committed from 4 to 1, some 6 to 1 points, and when they're recommitted, a bit more. Added up to his McClellan points, and then all those McClellan points are totalled at the end of the game and subtracted from the Union victory total. So you can see that now, fortunately, Hooker starts already committed. Although it's listed on here, I think it's an error because he starts the game with the orders and you already have 6 points added to McClellan at the start. So I think that's taken into account. But what it essentially means is it's cost 4 points to commit Hooker's first corps, and so if he doesn't capture one of the say the Dunker Church getting 4 victory points, that's going to be a minus. So he has to do something to make that commitment worthwhile. So it means the Union player, although he needs to commit more of his forces, because otherwise, with just the game starts with the Hooker activated and Mansfield waiting to figure out his orders. So on a die roll, he figures them out. It actually happened on the second game turn for me. So he comes up to support Hooker with his 12th corps. So those are the only ones started ready to do something at the beginning of the game. So the Union player wants McClellan to order some more in. Otherwise, that's an unsupported attack. The Confederate could ideally bring all his other forces to defend against that and wipe it out, while these are sitting there doing nothing. But it's going to cost you. So if you're going to activate them, A, it's going to take probably longer than the Confederate response, and B, it's going to cost you in victory points, so it better be worth it. And that, I think, neatly illustrates McClellan's reluctance to commit until he's sure of what's going to happen, in his general kind of like nervousness or conservative style of command. And then finally you have Burnside. Burnside, because he apparently he was kind of disgruntled for being reduced from or transferred from being the wing commander down to mere corps commander, and so his corps, which also has a critical intent to move across the bridge here and threaten the Confederate flank over here, he's going to dally as well. So even if he accepts his orders, he's going to take some time to properly put them into effect, due to special rules in this situation here. So there's all sorts of these problems on the Union command structure. But against that, they do have a lot of guns set up on the bluffs and heights up here, and they can start firing down at the Confederates quite early, which I think brings us to the start of the game. So the game starts with the Confederates here, the Union here, and then basically the situations you can see here. And we begin at 5:30, we end at 6 p.m. At 5:30 a.m. in the morning, the visibility is only 3 hexes, 600 yards out. So what that means is no artillery could see each other at the beginning. Then after half an hour, it goes up to 5 hexes, and then finally at 7 o'clock it's 8 hexes, and at 7:30 it's just open. The sun is full up over the trees and the horizon, I guess. So what that has meant, that it's slow to start the bombardment, and then that there was the Confederates have less artillery, so they had some, you can see they had some here, and there's some here, there are some here as well. They were ready to reply to all the Union guns. You can see there's 3 here, 1 there, 1 there. These are all full strength 5-pointers. These are 2s and 3 points. So I actually withdrew them, and all the Confederate units have withdrawn behind trees and bluffs and so forth, so that they're not going to be shelled while they're waiting. So what that does mean is that when Burnside does get going, he could probably move across quite promptly. It's going to take a moment for the Confederates to come back and unlimber their guns. But anyway, so the Confederates start off with that conservation. Then McLaws starts over the Potomac over here. So he comes on and he has to move up to Lee. He's just been reached there, because it takes a whole turn for every unit to move over the Potomac at the ford there. It's obviously a bit of a slow process. So it's taken him a while to get there, and he's been given orders to move out over to here, where obviously the main attack's going on. The beginning of the game was quite exciting because Jackson got... Lawton got initiative early on, and he brought his division straight over and took the eastwards. So there's 3 victory points there for the Union. So essentially, as the Union attack was moving out, he put himself in the woods to kind of create a blockage, so that Union couldn't just flow straight into the main line of defence of the Confederates, and that has been very effective. He has his brigade, his division is nearly wrecked, but he's completely blunted the the Union attack. So some units were attacking him in the woods. They've been sent back. Mansfield, though, has come up and is now threatening. So he's in a perilous position, but he's kind of done the job. He's slowed them down and given them something to think about, which gave a bit of time for Hood to move up and support of the Confederates which were around here, and gave time for these cannons to move back and to defend the flank here, because I did feel they were a bit out on a limb over there. And the cavalry came in here to defend the artillery, but it looked like Hooker might have sent a division over, so the Confederates were a bit cautious there. So the situation so far is we're just about to start the Union part of the 8 a.m. turn, and Jackson's division and Lawton's have taken... Lawton's actually is Ewell's division, but Lawton's in command. I don't know where Ewell is in this battle at the moment. Have taken a hefty beating, so the Confederates have taken quite a lot of damage, and they've slowed the Union, but the Union brigades tend to be so vast that they can take a lot of damage, and although they might get pushed back, they can recover and come forward again, whereas the Stonewall Brigade has been completely wiped out, for example. So the situation is, I wouldn't say desperate, but quite exciting for the Confederates here. Hooker's frustrated, but still he's pressing his attack, and now with Mansfield finally up, he'll be able to, either Mansfield will start assaulting the Sunken Road, or can support further down into the Dunker Church and Westwards area. Essentially what we need is for McClellan to bring someone over the bridge or the fords, the bridge here, at the fords over the Antietam here, and threaten the Sunken Road. Otherwise the Confederates have a question, is that can they withdraw some fellows from defending the Sunken Road to help with the defence here, and then maybe get them back in time to regain the defence. We shall see. The Confederates have Anderson's division coming up here following McLaws. That's their reinforcements. Late in the day, A.P. Hill will come in, and the Union are awaiting the 6th Corps there, and was that some 5th Corps there. I believe they come in at the top there. So it's early in the day, and probably I'll come back and if anyone's interested, to give an update once we sort of resolved what's happening on here, the next phase of the battle, and see what's what. So that's it for now on the Battle of Antietam, September 1862.